Hi, this is Dr. Otto Janke. Thanks for being with us today on AChiroRising. Today's interview is with Dr. David Fletcher, who is he's the chief, he's the CEO of the CLA. That's kind of tough to say, the CEO of the CLA, the Chiropractic Leadership Alliance. Highly recommend you go to their site. If you're not a member of the CLA, go find out what they do and how they take this technology and they make it even cooler. So you can actually not only talk the talk of nervous system, but you start showing the nervous system, which I think is absolutely just incredible and mandatory for you to do. So that's at subluxation.com. Pretty simple to find out, subluxation.com. Go take a look at it. I think it's fantastic. So take a listen to what Dr. Fletcher has to say and find out how he communicates how the nervous system works, and even cooler is how we can use technologies to find out how it works. Take a look. Let me know what you think. You can hit us up on the Facebook page, AChiroRising. And thanks for being here. And remember, this is AChiroRising. Dr. Otto Janke, welcome to AChiroRising. Today's audio, we're going to be with a friend of mine. We've known each other since, I think, 2005.
Yes.
Total Solutions in 2005 in Buffalo. Have you done it in Buffalo ever since?
No. Why would we?
Well,
I live only an hour and a half in Buffalo, and
yeah. Why would you do it there?
2.5. But no, we would prefer to fly across the every other day. But no, I say that because Buffalo is the butt of a joke for both we in Canada and you in upstate.
Us in upstate. By the way, this is my friend Dr. David Fletcher, who is the chief bottle washer and chief of all of the Chiropractic Leadership Alliance. I have been not only a member of the Alliance since that time, a rabid fan of theirs also. Can't express enough how much I love the CLA and for what they do and how they push chiropractic. Great stuff. My friend Dr. David Fletcher.
Yeah, you know what, Otto, and thank you. It's an amazing opportunity for us to share this message. But we've been sharing messages as both friends, colleagues, and I would say chiropractors of conscience.
Absolutely. For
those number of years, and it's always I think that one of the great things that I was able to do in my journey was to recognize that being in practice is the great crucible. It's where truly the rubber hits the road. I mean, you get a chance to meet humankind where they need you the most, and at the same time, you get to try and understand what you can do to elevate their experience, while at the same time keep true to the message of chiropractic. And I say that that's sort of one of the great challenges because, realistically, their experience as a human coming into a chiropractor probably isn't that they've done the research on subluxation, but they probably have a much better working knowledge of what is feeling in their body.
Absolutely.
And as a result of that, we really have to have this remarkable, compassionate relationship, and at the same time have this exquisite knowledge base that we can draw upon that keeps us centered so we don't fall into their trap, which is to fix their symptoms. So it's a very cool thing.
So I had Chris Kent on last week, and we talked for an hour about adaptability, which absolutely just the freaking coolest conversation ever, because in my office, our word for 2018 is adaptability. So it was really cool to talk to him about this. Introduce salutogenesis to our listeners, and then we're going to get into how far are we actually away from pushing chiropractic into a salutogenic model.
Well, it probably should be that we should fall back into the salutogenic model because it's about being in that place. I'm going to just say that for maybe the third and fourth quarter of 2018, if adaptability was your word of the day as we started the new year, I'd probably encourage you, since you're getting adaptability really, built into your conversations, I probably would stir the pot and ask you to consider coherence as the second word in that whole process. Because when we come down to it, to achieve adaptability, you have to take a complex system.
Right.
And complex system engineers work with the principles of coherence. And that means that, and this is where in biological systems, unlike mechanical systems, there is a striving necessity. It's built into our DNA. It's innate for us to strive, or for the body to strive to find a greater sense of coherence. And to achieve that greater sense of coherence, the outcome is greater adaptability. So the mechanism to get to adaptability is to have these complex systems come to ease. And that's where the chiropractic message was always built, the ease, dishyphenated ease, and disease process continuum. So when we think about salutogenesis, we take a look at Antonovsky's work.
Yep.
And if we could highlight what Antonovsky said in his definition of salutogenesis, and I'll paraphrase briefly, but it's a very short definition. But the key concept is that it's the ability, and this is the coherence, it's the ability to manage stress resources. That's the key concept there. And once you manage and once you become highly efficient at managing stress resources, then innate has the capacity to access all of that, contained energy, so that it can do what it is rigorously and infinitely designed to do, and that is to strive to come to a state of coherence. And when we achieve this ever-improving state of coherence, two things happen. That there is this there are those stress resources that allow, innate to draw upon, so that it can reorganize. And that's maybe the third word is reorganizational. Because what happens spontaneously to achieve coherence and achieve adaptability is these complex systems reorganize to become highly efficient. And so that's how this whole process comes about. So the salutogenesis, which is the genesis of, healthy expression or vital expression, is vastly different from pathogenesis. Is like on the other end of the spectrum. But in simple terms, it's the differential between ease and dis-ease. And we draw upon Lipton's work once we buy into this notion of ease and dishyphenated ease and disease. And Lipton's work was very clear when he said you can't, let's do the Canadian thing, is that you can't be standing on the dock and with one foot in the canoe at the same time. meaning that there is no friggin' way that you can be in a crisis, stress-dominated, protective state while striving to achieve a state of coherent wellness.
Right.
It just doesn't work. It's an A or B. It's binary. And so I actually put out I can't even remember where the article was, but it was the principle of binary wellness. It's an impossibility. You can't use the two in the same word.
Right.
And so I think we should dive into this, but you can't dig into a pathogenic model and be striving. I mean, you can understand a pathogenic model, for goodness sakes, we're clinicians, we need to know. And when it comes down to aligning your goal setting and your outcomes, you need to measure your outcomes in a salutogenic model as a chiropractor. And that's that binary wellness principle.
So, but here's and we're going to come into this, and what happens all the time, and we see it in practices with thousands of docs around the world, but they say, but the people come into me because of this thing over here, because I got this thing going on right here. That's why they come into me. And how do you jump that shark? How do you go from having that talk there versus how can I set up Dave Fletcher's next 70 years of potential health?
Well, I mean, listen, the one thing you never do is have the conversation that you and I are having now with the patient.
Right.
Unless they want to be engaged in something that's, offline and out of practice and everything else. You know, this is the essence of what we need to do to be great in practice. I mean, amazing in practice. And that is that we have to have that sense that we've been talking about of certainty. And, you know, I'm putting on it's going to be fun. I've sort of, as you've dedicated to the adaptability, we have a principle that's really about refining purposeful actions and redefining purposeful actions as our CLA thrust this year. And, you know, it was in one of those, you know, BJ moments of where you kind of wake up and you think, oh, my God, I should write that down. I was working, and you know her very well, with Lisa Marie. We were talking about purpose and how it was. And she started to have this conversation about, you know, you don't find your purpose finds you.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just such an incredibly strong statement. And so we started to riff on that, and we started to think, well, what does that really mean to the chiropractor? And in light of what you and I are discussing today, it really comes down to having the discussion that begins, you know, with yourself. And that is what is my role as a chiropractor? We certainly hope you know what your purpose is. But what is your role as a chiropractor? Is it to absolutely make them feel better or to function better? Or are we lucky enough to be able to have a skill set that does both? And I believe we're lucky enough to do both.
Yeah.
And there's a huge trust, and I like to do a little bit of wordsmithing here, but there's this huge trust model. And the trust model is based upon just that word trust. And trust is the root derivative of the word truth. And so as a result of that, when you get the truth straight, you get a chance to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you know, and sort of famous, you know, when you're certain of the outcome, you can afford to wait without anxiety. That's sort of the saying that I coined. And so it all begins with this necessity to say, you know, I can help you. But I think that's where you bring the patient into the conversation. One of the other things that, in terms of the conversation, that I do as a starter is that I let them have a monologue. I let them listen. You know, I let them talk, pardon me, and I just listen. And at the end of them describing, because they, you know, we started our conversation by saying they're a lot smarter to know what their feelings are about themselves than I am. So if I honor that and I just let them have this conversation to tell me what their perception is without generally being judgmental, I go now to that principle that I just said, which is that certainty. And I say it with, you know, not in a marketing way, not in some cheesy other way. I say it with the greatest sincerity, and I say, you know, I'm surprised, you know, that your body didn't have the resources to pull you out of this problem on its own. So why don't we take a look and see what's interfering with the natural way that your body was designed to recover? It's as simple as that. And then I sort of famously talked about how the day-to-day stresses go through those 3 layers in your spinal cord. And you know, what I have found, and I typically say what I have found, is that the best starting point is to understand how your body is designed to handle the stresses that you put on it. And those stresses can come from really anywhere in your life. And you are totally incapable, you know, totally able and capable to handle everything that you choose to take on if you have the right response. So what we're going to do is take a look in different layers, and we're going to see if for instance, the stresses that, since we're looking at your spine, you know, have gone through the muscles that move you, the bones and joints that support you, which are the top 2 layers. If you have a problem that stays in those 2 layers, you definitely have a back problem. And I'm going to understand that more. But my greatest concern is whether or not those same tensions that you feel in those upper layers has started to trigger a deeper response in the 3rd layer, which is the layer of your nervous system, which communicates and controls the connections between your brain and your body. So we have a technology that looks through these different layers and allows us to look deeply into that 3rd layer. I mean, that's sort of a great positioning statement. And what I'm really saying there, Otto, more than anything, is that I don't dig deep into a symptom review and a symptom profile with the patient. I let them tell me their symptoms, and then I take charge and tell them what my directional point of view is. And when I do that, I then defer back and say, why don't we take a look at how deep the stresses are affecting you, which is another way of Antonovsky's work,
Right.
you know, which is saying, what are your stress resources and their management? And we leave it at that. And you know, I learned that from the medical doctors more than anything, is that they sit and listen. It's the good ones anyways. They sit and listen, and then they say, you know what, why don't we take a look a little deeper than what you're telling me? We'll get back to you with what we're doing.
Right.
And then when we get back to them, like, I find many chiropractors, as you do, you know, when you're talking about that, yeah, right here, is that they do one of two things. Is that they all of a sudden decide they want to be their friend and want to be the fixer of the problem.
Right.
Right. And you know, I have this one great slide in one of my decks, and it's just a life preserver. You know, it's just this life preserver, and I talk about the most dangerous person on earth, and it's the drowning man. Right.
Right.
You know, you try and save the drowning man, and you're going down with them. Well,
yes.
Well, a patient in pain is like the drowning man. You know, woman. And as a result of that, if you fall into their trap of really trying to be their fixer, you bought into the the pathogenic model. And as a result of that, now we have an uphill climb to get out of that mess. On the other hand, if you have this sense of certainty that's like, you know, like I said, like the medical doctors do, and that they're like, all right, well, listen, I hear you're sick. I get it. Let me look to the cause of it. Now, they go off in a pathogenic model of trying to figure out what end organ is the trouble. But we are smarter than that.
Right.
Because we're DCs, doctors of cause, and we take a look back and we say, let's take a look how the reorganizational coherence of this adaptive system is interfered with.
Right.
Now,
right.
So that's sort of the baseline of that early conversation.
Love that. Love the three layers, which is, I think, is just a fundamental aspect of taking it deeper in the communication of what we do and how we can help people. That's phenomenal. You know, I had a father and a daughter in here last night that we go through our Monday night workshop with them, and they asked me, if they had gone to someone else, would they have put the daughter on the table right away the very first day and whatever, you know, snap, crack, pop them, as compared to coming here and we took a deep dive into the nervous system. And that was the craziest part, because you and I both know that's we have that opportunity to take a look deeper into the nervous system, and it's just a snapshot of where their health is at, and they never get to any place else. And it amazes me now, having done scans for 13 years, that the number of people who are now in sympathetic overdrive, it is in the 99% of people come into my door now, and it's not even a little bit in sympathetic overdrive. It is, they've got their foot so far pegged on that pedal, and you start looking at all the symptoms people come in with. It's because they think there's a bear in the room, and no wonder they're not functioning correctly. And that conversation is a phenomenal talk that I think I wish all docs could have with their practice members. And I thank you for bringing that communication pattern to us.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think that I've had a little anecdote of this, is that you talk about that 98 percentile that you know, have the sympathetic overdrive. In the early days, especially before this conversation was getting out there, we used to get a lot of our clients asking for their systems to be recalibrated, because they were saying, oh my God, every patient that comes in is on the sympathetic side. And you're like, no, they really are that sick.
Oh.
It's a frigged up society.
Oh.
I'm telling you. So it's interesting. You know, one of the things that we recognized was that there's a tremendous amount of data when you start to look deeper and do this deep dive as you described. And one of the challenges is to keep it real for the patient. And so, and to do that, you have to keep it real for the doctor first, and then real for the patient. I mean, you know, there's a typical tendency, because we got into healthcare, we're bright, and we love data, and we love to help people. And there's sort of a dichotomous process there, as we've been talking about, where you have to be certain that the data is leading you in the direction you want the outcomes to be given, as in the adjustments or otherwise. I'm a big fan of the evidence-informed model.
Right.
And so, what we have to do is we have to look at reliability and validity as it relates to the, to the use of technologies. Interestingly, they did, let me pull this number out of my head. I think they did 162 versions of orthopedic and neurological testing in the office. Traditional stuff that, you and I, maybe it was 62, I'm getting older, I'm magnifying, anyhow, a bunch of these different, orthoneuro tests. And the only one that showed inter-examiner reliability at a chi level that was supposed to be acceptable was bimanual palpation. That was the only one. So the other ones, especially, things like straight leg raise and otherwise, had some degree of reliability, but no validity for the pathogenic outcome. So when you put that baby, child, middle adult, senior on the table, you have to have a working knowledge as to what your on-table examination is going to be relevant to. And at the same time, you have to then have the skill sets to understand how technology is going to be relevant to the outcomes that you're offering. So let me just build on that for a moment. From 1895, when Röntgen decided that he was going to do X-ray and Palmer decided he was going to do, chiropractic, the two have been married in history between
Yes.
X-ray and chiropractic. And, you can't tell. I remember, Chris Kent, sort of challenging all of us in the room at the first time. He says, tell me the difference between this dead person and this living person, in looking at their X-rays, and you can't really.
Correct.
And so, we need to have a functional testing approach. And so and this goes back to the salutogenic model versus the pathogenic model. When you take a look at an X-ray, you have to have the lens of a chiropractor on to get the full value of what you're looking at, because you're going to be searching to see the pathology of the subluxation. And the pathology of the subluxation, just think about it. If you're looking at an X-ray for alignment, curvature, degradation, and things of that nature, yes, you can be looking at end-stage pathology, as in disease, which could be, discal disease and to some degree pain-based modeling of, obstructed IVFs, and God forbid there's deterioration from other disease within the spine itself. But then you think about it, and you really have to put that thinking, that salutogenic hat on, and think about it and say, wait a minute. This incredibly intelligent system wasn't set up to fail. It was set up to succeed.
Yes.
So everything that we're looking at on an X-ray, and of course I'm going to lead this down to a scan, everything that you see on the X-ray is an intelligent response of a system doing the best it can with what it has.
Yes.
And so you're looking at the hardest tissues of the body having warped under the strain of the subluxated state for a very long time.
Yes.
If you're seeing misalignments in the spine, that is an intelligent response of the body trying to reorganize itself, in most cases, in this case, against the gravitational load. And so instead of trying to outthink the thinker, it's time to really, acknowledge that this intelligent system is not in, well, it might well be in pathology, but your role as a chiropractor is to awaken or arouse innate so that it can begin this reorganizational healing all the way down to the hard structures. And I'll just suggest that, there was a really cool paper that Danny Knowles published. I think it was with Rochelle. And this was a case study of a 72-year-old male who had a 13-degree gibbous formation within the spine, measurable on X-ray. And believe me, as a scan expert, I still and actively endorse the use of X-ray.
Sure.
Whether it be to determine your angle or line of thrust, or whether it's to have this conversation or understanding of the depth of the subluxation. But they place this patient under an active care model of subluxation-centered care. And if you know Danny Knowles, it's a non-physical model of care.
Right.
It was NSA-based. And after 1 year, that 72-year-old male, measurable on there, had a reduction from 13 degrees to 5 degrees. And not once was there cavitation of the joint.
Right.
In the recovery model. And I'm lucky enough that I get a chance to hang with some pretty cool people who use our technology and are again on this. Michelle Fox just published a paper this coming, I don't even know if it's out yet. And again, she took pre and post full spine x-rays with a full complement of scans to organize the logic of function and structure as they go to measure. And again, we're taking a scoliotic patient and observing this unwinding, and her methodology is torque release. And so again, a non-cavitational model of the joints. Now look, I'm telling you bring your art to the table.
Right.
If your best approach is to get your hands, whether you're a gondroid or whether you're a TRT or whether you're an NSA or a diversified, I love you all. And I don't mean that I'm in a judgmental way, but I'm telling you, I love you all so long as you know where a primary subluxation is,
right,
and so long as you can post-check and pre-check, But I'm not going to live comfortably knowing that you're popping and praying and hoping that my scans are going to change, because they won't. In a salutogenic model, be satisfactory to you. Anyhow, so Michelle puts this program together, and she uses the full complement of our system. And not only was she able to track the individual scans, but the core score, which is the aggregated score of each of these. And really, so here we have a structural reorganization so that this big, massive curvature within the spine, idiopathic scoliosis that is changing, is measurable on the x-rays, measurable on the scans, but now measurable in an indices that's associated with neural efficiency, which is the core score. So very, very cool.
Absolutely phenomenal stuff that I love that we're able to now take a look inside the body without having to look inside the body, which is just the coolest thing ever now. Just the coolest thing. And I'm always astounded on a daily basis how well we still work with all the crap we got going on all around us all the time, having 98% of the people that we know come in our offices pegged in super sympathetic overdrive, and we still function pretty well. I'm still astounded by that, but I'm also astounded at adjusting someone on a regular basis consistently and watching them wake up. And it's just absolutely astounding on a regular basis that we can actually watch people not only say, listen, and I see people I don't see people a number of visits. I see people for a number of years. That's my goal. How many years can we see you and help you be healthier for now? And I tell everybody, next 70 years. And watching them on a regular basis say, I'm doing better. I'm doing better. I'm doing better. And what's better? And it's not something I can consistently put down on a piece of paper or a leg check or even a range of motion. But we watch their nervous system start to do this. The little acorn that becomes the mighty, mighty oak tree that it should be. Just the coolest thing ever to watch that on a regular basis. And as I tell the people, I don't think it's my job to get you out of pain anymore. I think it's my job to help you actually do the shit that's going to cause all the pain as much as possible. And and they look at you and they go, okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Cool. Tell me about what do you think is the coolest research we have coming out now?
Well, I think that, since the theme is really about re-engaging the chiropractic principles in practice, I think that you'd have to, I personally really love stuff that's being done on EMG just because, I like that sort of dyskinesis modeling, but, it's certainly not old school, but it's not as relevant as the work that's being done in HRV as it associates with the salutogenic model. And, and again, I get a chance to connect with some pretty cool people on our side of the equation, whether it be Christopher Kanta, who just put out this really great one, heart rate variability to assess the changes in autonomic nervous system function associated with vertebral subluxation. And it's a compendium of the research that associates with it.
Yeah.
But this was published just recently. But what was fascinating is that a paper that I was listed in as an advisor, but I take no credit for it other than to say that I had some conversations with it, was just published by Amy Haas and David Russell. And again, they were taking a look at this sympathetic overdrive to keep it simple, and then observing post-checks, post-associative improvements under a chiropractic model. And without going into it, it was just published, very nicely published, by the way, in the Journal of Chiropractic in Australia. So quite a very prestigious journal to be put forward in. And thankfully, I've worked with Amy over the course of a number of years now, of just really supporting her direction. She's brilliant, by the way. And she doesn't struggle with everything we talked about in terms of the coherence and the rest of it. She didn't have to take it to a biomechanical model and look at brain-based functionality. She jumped right in and looked at salutogenesis as it looks at functioning nervous system. Right. And Dave Russell, who I really got to know very well when he was the clinic director in New Zealand. These are really capable and bright researchers, and the outcomes are absolutely definitive to the fact that when you adjust somebody, you better watch out because they're just going to light it up. And when you were talking about, sort of these society models and the rest of it, and I have two sort of anecdotal, well, I wouldn't say two conversational models. Number one, when they talk about, 70 being the new 50, that's for people that take and strive to do something. And it's this resiliency that happens. So the culture isn't that all of it. I mean, people used to die at 30 and 40 and 50, in life history. And our longevity and our senescence and our resiliency is improving. And it's not because we live in a cleaner environment. That's for damn sure. Nope. And it's not because we live in a less stressful political environment. That's for damn sure.
No.
It's because there's a knowledge transfer that says, not in a fear-based way, which was, hey, if you smoke this, your lips are going to fall off. What they found out was they started talking to people about what it felt like to be in control of your life. And people bought into it. So when we started, and this goes back a number of years, when we started getting into this thing called chiropractic, yoga was this sort of, bizarre thing they did in church basements, and it wasn't there. And now, where it is now, I mean, if you're not in a yoga class or a spin class or whatever else, my kids that are in their high 20s now have a fitness culture. I mean, my kids are chiropractic kids, but their friends are just engaged in a fitness culture, and they don't even call it wellness. They just call it life.
Right.
That's the way they're supposed to be. So I guess what I'm trying to say and wrap this all around is that, when you said, Otto, and you said, well, I have this 7-year model that I'm thinking of for them, and I just tell them what I'm going to do, and they go, yeah, let's do it. And I'm thinking, why not? Like, the culture of the world, whether it's my kids or the yoga kids or whatever else, are people having a desire. If they're not on that train, man, it's kind of weird they're not.
Yes.
It's just kind of weird they're not. There's so much capable information out there. And, I built my practice, and I know you did as well. There's a fine line between being, inclusive and exclusive. It's a fine line. But, I built my practice on Maslow's hierarchy. And that's an inclusive model. And so the bottom rung in Maslow's hierarchy is safety and security. It's the basics of life.
Yep.
And I've traveled a tremendous amount into third world countries and immersed myself into third world cultures. And I can tell you that as powerful as chiropractic is, if you don't have proper sanitation and something to feed them, you won't be adjusting them very long.
Right.
So that's the bottom rung, right? as you move up into Maslow's middle territory, that's where we own that. We own that, because once you get out of that safety and security, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Right.
You know, once they're there, the next thing to do is say, do you want to optimize? You know, survival is one thing, but do you want to optimize? And this is where medicine has tried to step into our realm, thinking that in the safety and security model of Maslow's hierarchy, that they can move that uphill. They had no friggin' hope of self-actualization. It's just not going to happen. But, you know, our role is so clear that we own everything above that safety and security model. And, you know, we've always said in our doctrine towards the chiropractic, you know, setup that, you know, if you're bleeding from a few too many wounds or otherwise, or orifices for that matter, then the reality is go and get, you know, you're downscale. Go and see a medical doctor. You know, we've never fought with that. And, you know, I don't even want to get into it of what I see chiropractors doing these days, because, you know, I was just at Parker, and I think Parker's done a really nice job of repositioning itself, because a few years back, I didn't know whether I was at a community flea market that had nothing to do with chiropractic, and so they've repositioned themselves, and it's really organized. But I got to tell you, there's so much confusion, and it begins with this, you know, these people trying to find their purpose, and you know, not easy.
It's no, it's not. And I talk with a lot of students coming out of college, and what they went in for is not what they came out with, and their viewpoint of how they're going to help the world is dramatically changed, and it's a dramatic difference as to what the potentiality of what they could be doing. That's a wild part, just absolutely wild. We could do another 2 hours just on that one statement alone. What's your next speaking engagements, or what's the next big things for you and or CLA coming up?
Oh man, we're a restless creative group, and I guess that's why I love leading this team. You know, we put a tremendous amount of effort into making the system that we have relevant to 2018, but at the same time, ease of use is really critical.
Yes.
We know that as good as scanning is, and as necessary, and I'll even say essential, as scanning is to look deeper into the nervous system, it has to have a practical application. It has to be easy to use. It has to have relevance. And one of the things that never was easy with the original substation was that, of course, it was wired. So, I mean, I didn't really care too much about tripping over wires in an exam area, because you could control it. But if we wanted to begin to extend the system out into the adjusting areas, so that we had the ability to take snapshots of people, we had to really start to go through a journey of trying to make it relevant. If we wanted to bring the insight into the community, you know, through screening events and things of that nature, it had to have an ease of relevance to do it. And this is one of the things that I've been passionate about, is making sure of two things. Number one, that we could get it into a multi-use facility. Multi-use doesn't mean multi-disc. I'm talking about using it from the exam room to the tables and otherwise. So we've been passionate about developing this cloud-based program. And, you know, how do you see who the pioneer is? Well, they're lying face down with 7 arrows in their back, and I feel like that these days, you know. But I think that at the end of the day, I mean, we've never seen. So, I mean, our company is doing fabulously, and I'm not saying that from a business perspective. It means that our message is killing it. We've never seen so many young active doctors graduating and choosing to go into a scanning model as their starting point. And so it's very interesting is that the largest cohort, comes as no surprise, but the largest cohort of our sales over the past 3 years are in the 25 to 34-year-old range. Guess what? Female over male. And as a result of that, we know that our message is that they're searching for continuity in care, objective measures, and relevance to all ages within the spectrum of the family. And so we're finding that those especially younger women graduating are beyond passionate about organizing their message to the growing families in their community.
Yeah.
So how cool is that?
Super cool.
That's salutogenic if there ever was anything. So I get a chance to speak with you at the Berkshires, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, man.
And then you're doing Rubicon, I think, are you?
Not doing Rubicon. I'm actually on the road this weekend to Rochester for the New York Lyceum. Then I don't know. I'm on the road a couple of weeks in a row here. It's I'm almost on the date.
Join in. It was 40 weekends for me last
Yes,
year. So.
I'm not that many. I'm almost on the David Fletcher tour soon. It's amazing. I tell people all the time, and these young docs coming out, they ask me, what would I do in practice if I did all over again? I said, first of all, I'd have 2 chiropractic tables, minimum 2 chiropractic tables at all time. And they always tell you, well, I can only see one person at a time. I said, no, you can't. You can see many people at one time. That's the other thing. I would have a system of intake forms and everything like that online. You can find that at AChiroRising someplace. But the other thing I'd have is I would have a substation. And it's just, if you're going to communicate, if you're going to talk nerve, you got to show nerve. If you're going to talk about health, you got to show health also. It's just one of those things that I would do. And they say, what about, I said, you asked me what I would do. That's exactly what I would do. And those are 3 things I would have. And that's the only 3 things I would need for massive success.
And I do it in 900 square feet. You know what I mean? Is that I wouldn't kill myself and take on some massive, if you're talking about the early days.
Yes.
I mean, legendarily, you heard the story of how I started my practice in a hotel room, but it's a crazy start. And the realities is that it's so funny you bring this up because we're going to be doing a Facebook Live on just what you said there. And I said the same 3 things. I said, you need a front desk, which is whatever it takes, whether it's a human or an ACR,
yep.
Preferably both. You need tables, good ones, because they're going to last you. And good ones don't have to be the high-lows and anything else, but just good ones instead of a portable. And you need an insight. And you need, I'm going to take that away. You need objective measure. I don't want to sound like a homer. You need some form of objective measure. And as you said, if you're talking nerve, then you have to show nerve. And listen, I would love to believe, and Amy Haas and I have been talking about this, I would love to believe that, the next level interest is to where we start to show EEG associated with HRV, coherent, models
Sure.
and the rest of it. Why wouldn't you? But then you get down to the practicality and you start to think, well, listen, chiropractors didn't know about HRV and we kind of taught them about that. So the learning curve can be done, through this salutogenic lens. EEG is not complicated to understand, but the storyline of it is very difficult to keep away from functional medicine. And since you asked, let me have this amazing doctor in Alberta, and he's a total solution grad as you are. And he sent me this very passionate message the other day, and he was like, "Oh my God," and he wasn't picking on it. He said, I'm almost disconsolate about this whole thing because the Alberta board has started to come up and say that, these are investigative strategies to be talking to people about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
And to be talking about these are not proven entities, and as a result of that, you really need to restrict your communication and certainly your objective measures that are in these investigative, not technologies, but concepts.
Yes.
And so I got in touch with some friends in there, and I said, what could, I started the Central Alberta Society in my earliest days and was involved in sort of the structuring, and many years ago that began to change, and it's like the rust in a system, and so they have a very active group of chiropractors in Alberta, but the leadership is really concerned about this MSK sort of model, musculoskeletal model that's sort of taking forward. And as it turns out, and so this is where a good thing can go a little wrong. You start opening up salutogenesis, and you start opening up the idea of neurofunctional assessments and the rest of it. And before you know it, there's people treating ADD and treating ADHD, with chiropractic,
Yeah.
right? next thing you know beyond that is that there's the, chiropractic neurologists, care-trained chiropractic neurologists who are really very useful if you have neuropathology. I'd much rather my kid who is having, destructive, lesions have an assessment at the same time as a pathology-based neurologist with a chiropractic neurologist. I want to know. But when it comes down to outcome, when you start crossing the line from the subluxation-centered salutogenic model and you start offering outcomes that are pathology-based outcomes,
right,
you're stepping into a big pile of poo. And I understand where the regulatory board is going. Don't get me wrong, but it should be to, wrestle in a little bit of the language that's associated from the neurofunctional outcomes and redirect, if we're chiropractors policing ourselves, and redirect it towards the outcomes that are absolutely relevant every time in a chiropractic model, which is engaging a more neural efficient model through the act of adjusting. And we can track that and we can see that every time.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely, agree with you 100% on that. I have to tell you that it was about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. I've been in practice 26 years, over 20 years ago, that heard you on a phone call one night. And you talked about, and I used this, and I think I've told you this before, but I used this for years in the beginning of all my talks, and it was, are you using healthcare to manage your symptoms or to see how great you can be?
yes.
And that really set me on a whole different path of my communication with people. And it amazes me now that we have the opportunity to actually now show people that they're getting better, not just feeling better, but you're actually getting better. And my last 26 years in practice have been phenomenal, and it's been a metamorphosis. And I thank you for allowing me to take part of that.
Well, it's some of the stuff that comes out of your mouth. You never know, right? Like moose.
Like talking about killer moose.
Anyhow, yeah, no, it's. I think that we began this sort of conversation by talking about this great crucible of where intelligence and experience and hopefully mastery all get mixed up together, and that's called practice.
Right.
And it was a big decision. I practiced lovingly, and I mean passionately, for 36 years. And when I made the decision to step away from active practice and take on this role, it wasn't taken lightly because my personal mission is to elevate the excellence, whether it be on the tables or whether it be in a profession. And one of the things that I understood was that I could meet people like you, and that I could meet more people like you and have an influence, as you just described, in some greater way, so that the next 26 years of these youth that are coming up and otherwise may be able to take a little bit of the sting out of that, and it is hurtful, Otto, because we're really searching in our educational years to learn. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do, right? And so, you go through these 4 years or nearly 4 years of postgraduate work in a chiropractic model, and they just stuff your brain full of fabulous information about how humans function. And at the same time, you have to kind of go, God, I love that stuff. Like that, who doesn't want to know more about interesting forms of function and pathology and all the rest of it? And then you kind of get into this clinical practice, and you're thinking, oh man, all roads lead to one thing. It's just an adjustment at T4, and I'm just a trained monkey, for doing this. And I mean, I think we all went through that thing. Did I really need to go through 7 years of university to do the same thing over and over again?
Yeah.
And the answer was, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You know what? Because it's not just the initiation. It's the you did, so that you can have that incredible certainty of thoughtfulness, so you can give a human adjustment to another human. And when you get your and I've always sort of talked about the 3 levels of knowingness. And you have to go from the educated knowingness to the experiential knowingness to the masterful knowingness, where knowingness and the mastery is effortless. It's that you have to go through that elevation of that excellence through each of those levels, and then draw upon all of them. I think the most important thing of living in a mastery model is going back and doing what we did and engaging yourself in the knowledge. But, you know, there were years under which I really craved to know performance-based function, and couldn't get me out of journals that were associated with sports and performance function. And now I have much more passion to, in an academic level, to look at things that talk about the performance of the functioning nervous system,
Right,
as it relates to people unfolding. And that includes spirituality, you know, the ability of socialization. And I mean, listen, when you're a chiropractor in this level, everything you pick up, whether it's a news article or otherwise, speaks loudly to either subluxation or performance, right, or optimization.
absolutely.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is. Absolutely.
That's the way.
Dr. David Fletcher, appreciate your time, your love, your expertise, your leadership, your love for all things that we call TIC. I appreciate your time today. And how can someone get a hold of you?
Well, you know, we're one of those really easy URLs to find. Was subluxation spoken here.
Yes.
And I think that I'd honor Matt, especially by saying we engage subluxation and human performance on our site. So we're passionate about seeing chiropractors get a message.
And nothing better than having successful chiropractors taking care of people for the rest of their lives. Absolutely love that.
Thanks, Otto, for including me.
Dr. David Fletcher, appreciate your time, your love, and expertise of all things chiropractic. We will see you soon, my friend.
Always.